WNBA, victories for Las Vegas and Golden State. The Atlanta Falcons gave wide receiver Drake London a 4-year contract extension worth $100 million guaranteed.
Live from the heart of SEC country, this is your daily fix of grit, guts, and gridiron glory. Welcome to the Deep South College Football Show.
Bowen, here he goes! Georgia retakes the lead!
Breaking down the biggest matchups, the boldest takes, and the deepest rivalries in college football on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
Intercepted! They confused him! Xavier Brown headed the other way! Touchdown Tide!
From Fayetteville to Gainesville, from the Grove to Toomer's Corner, it's SEC football.
Chambers delivers! Touchdown!
Now, here's your award-winning host, Wyatt Fulton.
Welcome into the Wednesday edition here of the Deep South College Football Show on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports here. Former Alabama head coach Nick Saban has testified in front of Congress today in support of the Cruz-Cantwell Saving College Sports bill. What does that mean? What is the bill doing? And why is Nick Saban supporting it? That's the conversation today here on the Deep South College Football Show, as the SEC and the Big Ten have both come out in opposition of the Saving College Sports bill proposed by Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Washington Senator Maria Cantwell. It was also supported by Missouri and Delaware senators as well. And it's a Republican and Democrat senator coming together on this. Maria Cantwell is a Democrat from Washington, whereas Ted Cruz is a Republican from Texas. So we'll talk about it here today. Nick, like we mentioned earlier, Nick Saban has come out in support of the Cruz-Cantwell bill. So we'll talk about that here today on the program. What does it mean? What would it do if it does pass the Senate and the House votes as well? And what does it mean for the state of college sports as a whole? We got the gentleman hanging out back in the Tide 100.9 studio. Gentlemen, how we doing today?
Doing good. Can't complain. Very hot, though.
Very, very warm out there. Hey, by the way, Jackson will be there covering Alabama Super Regionals. We got approval today. Alabama Super Regional in baseball against St. John's will take place on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday if that third game is necessary. So be sure to keep an eye out on Tide 100.9 for our content from Jackson O'Brien and Micah Nichols there for Super Regionals. Jackson, it's the first one Alabama's hosted since 2006. None of us here, at least on the written side production. Some of our show hosts were on the air at the time with, I think, Gary Harris, Ryan Fowler were on the air at the time of that. But Jackson, you, me, Chase, Micah, Simon, none of us were on the Alabama beat covering Alabama. Hell, like some of us weren't even Alabama fans at that point. So should be a lot of fun this weekend against St. John's in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I think I was like 4 years old the last time they hosted Super Regional. So
yeah. I think you were 4 years old. I think would have been April of 2006, so I'd have been 5 years old. I don't think Simon was alive at that point. I don't think Simon was alive at that point. So going to be a lot of fun, though, with Alabama and St. John's. We'll talk about that matchup a little bit later in the week here. Gary Harris will have Rob Vaughn on, I believe, on Friday. He normally has Coach Vaughn on Friday. So it'll be a lot of fun here in the Super Regional. But, Jackson, let's talk about it here. Nick Saban comes out in support, testifying in Congress today, of the Cantwell-Cruz bipartisan bill titled Protect College Sports Act of 2026. What is this bill going to do, right? And I got my degree in journalism. Yes, I got my degree in sports journalism. I have no interest whatsoever in covering politics, in covering Congress. Could not give a rat's behind about covering any of that. But when Congress gets involved in college sports, we got to talk about it here on the program. So a general rundown of what this bill is expected to do here. It will establish a federal right for athletes to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, NIL. It will establish a federal right for athletes to profit off of their name, image, and likeness here. And then in addition to that, as I'm reading from comonews.com here, they've got a kind of a breakdown of what's going on here with this bill. federal right for athletes to profit off of their name, image, and likeness while requiring contracts to disclose compensation terms and athlete obligations. It would also require agents to register with states, cap agent fees at 5%, and prohibit misleading recruiting practices tied to NIL deals. There's a lot more stuff that's coming with this, but let's pause right there and talk about what this part means. All right, so we'll break this down piece by piece. Jackson and I will talk about it here. Number one, the bill will establish federal rights for athletes to profit from their name, image, and likeness. We already know NIL has been legalized in the modern era of college football. NIL is legal. So athletes are getting paid to play college sports. This would just make it a federal right. Remember, that was an issue back in the early 2000s with the video game. That kind of started everything on this here, NCAA, the video game. Athletes felt they should be compensated for their names, their image, their likeness being put in these games. And as a result, it was pretty much ruled, hey, you're not employees. No, you're not going to be able to profit off of this. And that kind of killed the video game. But now that NIL is back, NIL is legal, they can profit off name, image, and likeness. What do we mean when we say NIL, name, image, and likeness? It's jersey sales. If you see fans running around Bryant-Denny Stadium wearing a number 9 Young jersey, Bryce Young gets a little bit of money off of that. And I think at the time Richard Young did too, but he's no longer on the roster. Didn't get drafted out of Alabama or anything like that. But if you see a fan in the stands this season with a number 2 Williams or a number 1 Coleman Williams jersey or a number 17 Brooks jersey, hey, whatever you paid on that jersey, probably $120, whatever you paid for that jersey, you are a percentage of that goes to the athlete in terms of that's their name. They're profiting off of their name. Their image, if you see a billboard of Ryan Coleman Williams or Latsier Brooks or Keelan Russell or Austin Mack or Daniel Hill, if you see a picture of an athlete on a billboard in, a giveaway or something like that, they are profiting off of their image and then their likeness. If you're playing with them on the video game, that is their likeness being used. So they are able to make money off of these things. I think when you come off the interstate, right there on McFarland Boulevard, under the bridge, under that red bridge there, you'll see a picture of Vic Moten up on a billboard. Vic Moten has the ability to make money off of that. Matter of fact, Vic Moten got paid for her picture to be used on that billboard. So that is what NIL is, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. It has more so turned now into pay for play. How much are you going to pay me to come play for your university? That's what NIL has become, right? So you've got reports of wide receiver Manchin Sales. We talked with Brett Greenberg of Bama 247 last week ahead of his official visit to Alabama that he's going to command 7 figures. That doesn't mean necessarily he's going to get a 7-figure NIL deal. That doesn't mean that you're going to see Manchin Sales plastered all over billboards and signs and game programs and things like that in Tuscaloosa. No, that's 7 figures. $1 million that the University of Alabama is trying to pay Manchin Sales to come play at the University of Alabama. And it's not just Alabama. Texas and Indiana are doing the same thing. All the schools are doing this. It's now pay for play. What this bill is establishing, though, is it will require contracts to disclose compensation terms and athlete obligations. So compensation terms. Jackson, we don't really know what these athletes are making. We have general ideas based on reports, based on what we hear, right? Sources say, this kid's making that much money, this guy's making this much money, but we don't know the exact dollar figures, right? We know for a fact, okay, Ryan Coleman Williams is probably making over $1 million, but 7 figures. What do we mean by 7 figures? Because that could be anywhere from $1 million to $9 million, right? Anything in that window is considered 7 figures at that point. So it would require contracts to disclose compensation terms. I don't know if that means that it would become public knowledge, right? Normally, if there's a contract involved, that's public record. So we could potentially see a more open market idea of like, hey, we kind of know what these players are making here. However, even if it doesn't, it is now put in writing, hey, this is what this player is making. Manchin Sales, you're going to make $1 million your first year at Alabama. You're going to make $1.3 million in year number 2. In year number 3, you're going to make $1.5 million. And then if you stay for year number 4, you'll make 1.7, whatever the numbers end up being. I'm just throwing out ballpark numbers here. and athlete obligations. So this bill is, I guess, trying to eliminate the pay-for-play model here. Athlete obligations, what do we mean by that? Well, you're getting paid for your name, image, and likeness. You're going to have to do a little bit of work to get your name, image, and likeness payments. So it's no longer just, all right, here's $1 million, come play for my university. It's, hey, we can pay you $1 million, but you're going to have to do signings. You're going to have to endorse things. You're going to have to make appearances. You're going to have to show up, sign autographs, and take pictures at an event. And therefore, once you do that, then we can pay you X amount of money for that event. So you'll have to do a certain number of events to get your money and things like that. I got no issue with this part of the bill, Jackson. I don't love the idea that it may limit what athletes are making, because college football is a $1 billion industry. And so I think these athletes should probably be compensated the fair amount that they deserve. But I do like that it's not as hush-hush anymore, right? It's not, oh, well, the Jack's Milkshake guy told me that, Ryan Coleman Williams just got paid this much money, or, hey, I've got a source inside the building saying, hey, we're paying this guy that much money. It's a little bit less hush-hush, and it's more cut and dry. Hey, we are going to pay you $4 million over 4 years to come play for our university. So I like that aspect of it, Jackson, here. I don't know that I necessarily love that it may restrict what they can make.
I don't think I understand that sentiment, but I also don't think that like it used to be, okay, your compensation is that you get a full ride scholarship to that university, and then you're going to get your degree and all those things. Now it's just turned into, okay, who's going to pay me the most, and I'll go play there, and I'll get to go to school for free there.
Yeah.
I don't like that. And when you look at what NIL stands for, like you broke it down, name, image, and likeness, I do think that, okay, your compensation now should only be the scholarship on top of what you can make off your own personal brand. I don't think it should be the schools paying you to play there when that's what you're there to do. That is, you're on scholarship to do that. The money that you will make in order to actually play football will come once you reach the next level. This is collegiate athletics, not professional athletics. So that's my standpoint.
This bill would also require agents to register with states and cap agent fees at 5%. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. These agents are taking advantage of young athletes that are making money for the first. Some of these kids are making substantial money for the first time in their lives. They don't necessarily have the financial intelligence to understand, okay, I need to put, if you're an independent contractor, because they're not employees, right? They are not employees. So as a result, you probably have to fill out a 1099 tax form. That's an independent contractor, which means that, I may pay you $1 million and you may see $1 million hit that bank account, but guess what? Come April 15th, you got to pay taxes on that. So as a result, you need to be putting a certain percentage away to pay your taxes on April 15th. A lot of these kids, we were all 18, right? We all were filling out our taxes for the first time. Some of us as an independent contractor, some of us as, employees, but a lot of us probably don't realize that. A lot of these kids probably don't realize that because they haven't made this type of money before. So I like the idea of financial literacy classes. I think it should be mandatory in college in general. It should be mandatory in general. You have to take a financial literacy class, whether that be you're going to become an independent contractor, you're going to be, you're going to sign with an agency if you are a sports media personality or an athlete or whatever, or if you're just going into the regular workforce. You need to be able to understand your finances, understand your taxes, and understand, hey, I may not be getting all this money. You need to understand compound interest and things like that for 401ks, for Roth IRAs, for retirements, right? Because, Jackson, as much as I love covering college football, as much as I love covering sports, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 80 years old. I don't want to still be sitting behind a microphone at 80 years old. At that point, I want to go sit on a beach. I want to go spend the rest of my days sitting on a beach, enjoying whatever time I've got left at that point. So putting money into a retirement fund, understanding that there is a life outside or after what you do for a living. For me, this career could be I started when I was 22. I mean, if I go as long as Lee Corso did, this is a 60-year career, and I hope I get the opportunity. I hope I have the opportunity to do that. I don't want to do that, though. I want to retire early, and I'm going to go sit on a beach and enjoy my life at that point while I still have the ability to. For these athletes, these career earnings, they're so much more than what I'll be making here as a sports media personality, but it's also much, much shorter, right? Jackson, the average length of an NFL career is 3.5 years, and only the top 1% of high school athletes go play college football. The top 1% of college athletes go play in the NFL or the NBA, go play in their respective league, right? And even then, there's very few 40-year-olds running around in the NFL, the MLB, the NBA, right? The longevity stories of Tom Brady and LeBron James and Freddie Freeman, they're not the norm. That's not normally what's going to happen. More than likely, you're going to be retiring from your professional league at 31, 32, 33, even in the long range, right? You're probably still going to be retiring at 36, 37, 38. The average career is 3.5 years long. So if you declare for the NFL draft as a 23-year-old and you only go the average length, you're sitting there at 26, 27 years old with no idea what you're doing post-career. So you need to have a degree and the financial literacy and wherewithal to understand, all right, I got to put money away now to set myself up for success in the long run. So the fact that some of these agents are taking, Jackson, I've heard of agents taking 20, 30% of what these athletes are making. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the NFL's got a cap too, right? So what this cap would do is it would cap it at 5%. The agent cannot take more than 5% of what these athletes are making here. So I love that aspect of this bill. It also will prohibit misleading recruiting practices tied to NIL deals. And this is one that I think a lot of people don't quite understand because I didn't understand it right off the rip, right? When I first read this, I was like, okay, what do we mean by this? Misleading recruiting practices. Is it saying, hey, I'm going to pay you $1 million and then I'm only paying you $500,000? Not necessarily. The way a lot of these deals work is a lot of pitches work is they pitch the high end, right? So, hey, I'm a 5-star receiver and I want to go to Texas, and Texas says, hey, I'll pay you $1.7 million to come to my university and play for the Longhorns. But it may not necessarily be, all right, I'm giving you $1.7 million up front. It's, hey, you can get up to $1.7 million by fulfilling NIL deals, by fulfilling NIL requirements. So Texas at no point said, you're going to have to go find your own deals. You're going to have to go get your own endorsements and things like that. But you can make up to $1.7 million. Texas said, I'm throwing Texas out there, not as a dig at the Longhorns. Don't take it as a dig at Texas. Just they're one of the schools that has the most money. And so I'm using them as the example, not a dig at Texas here. But Texas comes out and says, hey, we'll pay you $1.7 million without saying, oh, but, you may have to go find your own endorsements. You may have to go, get your own things. We'll provide you a couple of deals, but it may not equate to the number that we're telling you. So that is what they mean when they say misleading recruiting tactics tied to NIL here. And there's other legislation in here as well that we'll talk about here on the other side of this break. But first, we got to pay some bills here on the Deep South.
For his clients. Remember M for money and Mesrano.
If it has a logo on it, call me. 205-800-8000.
What does it mean to advertise and do your marketing with Town Square Media Tuscaloosa? Melissa started her business in 2014. What would you say to someone considering Town Square Media Tuscaloosa?
My experience with Town Square Media has been awesome, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I think that this is the first time in my marketing experience that I've been able to see my return on investment. I would definitely say in the past that has not been the case. In this, I like knowing that that's 100%. A lot of the marketing we've done has been radio. You guys have so much more to offer than that, whether it's, websites from targeted marketing to radio. You are kind of a one-stop shop, and it makes doing marketing so much easier. So I would definitely recommend it.
For more info on marketing
possible, ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit TremfyaRadio.com.
Tide 100.9 Tuscaloosa weather.
Here's your Tuscaloosa and West Alabama forecast. A beautiful afternoon with sunshine at 83, an easterly breeze, 60 our low tonight. High tomorrow, 83. 53. Thursday night's low 60. And Friday, sunshine with a high 86. Looks like our next shot at showers and storms come in late in the day on Saturday with a high 86. Numerous showers and storms to close out the weekend on Sunday. Sunday's high in the mid-80s. Richard DeWetting at the Weather Channel for Town Square Media, Tuscaloosa.
It's 83 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
A national championship team covering a national championship team. The best sports talk in the state. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Welcome back into the Deep South College Football Show here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC. Hey, if you're checking us out on YouTube or the Tide Facebook page or X, we really appreciate you guys. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know that you're checking out the stream here today. We're talking about the Cruz-Cantwell bipartisan bill here, talking about college athletics. And we went over kind of what the bill was initially going to establish in the previous segment. Now, the legislation also includes several protections for athletes beyond compensation. And here's what those protections are, courtesy of Como News here. A 10-year scholarship guarantee allowing athletes to complete their degrees after eligibility expires. I like that idea. I mentioned in the last segment here about how you've got to get that degree. That degree is so important there for a lot of these athletes because the average career is 3.5 years, right? So you're 27, 26, even on the long end, you're probably still in your early to mid 30s retiring from your professional league and still got a long ways to go in life. So you need to be able to do something after your career is done here. So I like the fact that it's encouraging athletes to complete their degrees here. I am interested, though, Jackson, how the scholarship window works. Are we taking that out of our regular, 105 that football is allowed to have, the 105 scholarships that football is allowed to have? So whatever, we'll say 10-year scholarship guarantee, right? Ty Simpson. We'll take Ty Simpson, for example, here. Well, he's, gone off to the NFL. He was drafted in the NFL in 2026. Does that scholarship count against Alabama's 10-year or count against Alabama's scholarship limit for the next 10 years? Or is it just simply, hey, you've got an academic scholarship at this point? That's what I'm interested to see, because that could change and defer how teams go about building their rosters. You may take less scholarship guys in order to have enough scholarships to field a competitive roster at that point. So I'm just interested to see how that would work, I guess. Protection against losing scholarships because of injury or athletic performance. And you don't really hear about that a ton, but it kind of is something that, you got to deal with. If you've got a 5-star freshman receiver that unfortunately blows his knee out midway through his freshman season and can't play again, because we have seen career-ending injuries. Tyrone Prothro had a career-ending neck injury. So we've seen some of these things happen before. It prevents them from losing their scholarship. So again, encouraging them to complete that degree. Mandatory medical coverage for Division I athletes while competing. I believe that's been the case at the P4 level. I think Alabama's had that in I believe Alabama, I know for sure, had that when Tua went down or Dylan Moses was dealing with their injuries. They were providing the medical coverage for those athletes there. 5 years of post-eligibility medical coverage for sports-related injuries. So this one's a little bit different here. The way Alabama had worked things before, and I'll use Dylan Moses as the example again. Remember, he was a phenomenal linebacker at Alabama, was projected to be a top 50 pick in the NFL draft before tearing his ACL prior to the 2019 season. In 2020, he comes back, plays for Alabama, goes to the NFL draft, and goes undrafted. At that point, Alabama had kind of a protection in there. So whatever he was projected pre-injury, again, I think top 100 pick is what he was projected, whatever he missed out on. So from top 100 pick, that's first 3 rounds of the draft, to undrafted. That difference was covered by the University of Alabama. That difference in what he was going to earn was covered by Alabama. So this kind of extends that coverage to medical coverage for sports-related injuries. And I assume, if they're drafted in the NFL, let's say Caden Proctor, for example, tears his ACL this season. If this rule was in place, I would assume that's covered by the Miami Dolphins at that point, no longer Alabama, because he's in the National Football League at that point. And then the final standpoint here, a $60 million annual trust fund to help schools cover long-term athlete health needs, including conditions such as CTE. basically just a $60 million annual trust for these schools to provide the medical coverage that these athletes need. Jackson, I really don't see much of an issue with any of this that they're providing to the athletes.
No, I don't either. I mean, the medical coverage, that sounds pretty good. The only one that I, like you said, would have, questions about how it would work would be that scholarship stipulation. But other than that, I think they also threw in there a transfer portal rule where, you get one free transfer, and then if you want to transfer again, you have to sit out a year. But if you do transfer a second time, it's without the sitting out a year. It's under the stipulations of, your coach leaves or gets fired, program death, or something like that.
Yeah, and that's in here in this from Como News that I'm reading. I agree. Well, that's what the transfer portal used to be, right? The transfer portal used to be, hey, you've got to sit out a year no matter where you go, where you transfer, right? So when you see guys like, Cam Newton transferred from Florida, had to sit out a year unless he went the JUCO route, which he did. So that was kind of the loophole in the rule back then. You could transfer, but if you did, you had to sit out a full season unless you went JUCO. So in the case of Cam Newton, he transfers from Florida, goes to JUCO for a year, and then goes to Auburn to kind of circumvent that rule. But now you would be allowed one transfer without losing eligibility. Your second transfer, you would be required to sit out a year, except for some of these stipulations here that are in the bill here. Program discontinuation, right? So you had Birmingham Southern, I believe, discontinue their university just a couple of seasons ago. Well, all the baseball players then had to go find new teams. Everybody who played sports for Birmingham Southern University had to go find a new team. So if they had transferred in, they would be safe because the program got discontinued. Coaching changes. We see coaching changes across the sport every single year. So if a coach leaves or retires or gets fired, you would be allowed to then transfer another time without having to sit out that season. So Ole Miss players that wanted to follow Lane Kiffin to LSU, you had the ability to do that. Alabama players that wanted to leave after Nick Saban retired, you'd have the ability to do that. Jeremy Bernard, for example, is a guy that would have been affected by this rule because he started his career at Michigan State, transferred to Washington for his sophomore campaign. Well, Kalen DeBoer left Washington and came to Alabama. Jeremy Bernard came with him. He would be protected under this rule of a coaching change, basically. Military service for the military academies, pregnancy for the female student athletes, or sexual misconduct issues, which I guess would be in the case of, what was his name? Jake Retzlaff, the BYU quarterback that was undergoing a sexual misconduct case in Utah. Okay. Just a quick recap so everybody remembers what happened with Jake Retzlaff here. He was accused of rape by a BYU student, and his defense was that everything happened consensually. It was not rape, but there were sexual actions that took place. Well, because of the BYU Code of Conduct, meaning saying that you can't have premarital sexual relations, he was going to be suspended for the entire first half of the year before any sort of ruling came down on whether he did or didn't, do things in the wrong way with that young lady. So he ends up unenrolling from BYU, enrolling in Tulane as a walk-on, and that's how he got to play for the Tulane Green Wave last season. So this, I guess, would protect Jake Retzlaff. Not protect Jake Retzlaff, but protect athletes that are in certain situations like that. In terms of this aspect, I really don't have an issue with the bill. I really don't, because these athletes deserve these protections. They're putting their bodies on the line. Some people say, yes, they're getting the free education. That's compensation enough. Well, it's really and truly not, right? I mean, Jackson, you just recently graduated from the University of Alabama. You worked part-time during your time in college. I worked part-time during my time in college. Because I was not a student athlete, I had the ability to go and do that because I've got nothing, barring me from making money during my time in college. But because, Ryan Coleman Williams plays football, suddenly he can't go make money. I think that's utterly ridiculous. He is working full-time, quote unquote, hours, a full-time, quote unquote, job by playing for the university. So as a result, yes, he's getting the education. Yes, he's getting, housing and food and things like that taken care of by the university. But they do have the ability to then make money for the job that they are performing, right? I was on an academic scholarship at the University of Mobile for my undergrad. So because I was getting, free education, free food, and things like that, I was still allowed to work. So why shouldn't these athletes still be allowed to work? Some of the issues come up, though, with this bill. The SEC and the Big Ten have both come out in opposition to the bill. And I'll read you what the SEC and the Big Ten put out in their joint statement here. If you'll give me just one quick moment so I can pull it up, we'll all be able to see it here on the screen. It is a joint statement between the SEC and the Big Ten here. Quote, the Big Ten Conference and the Southeastern Conference support a substantial national framework for college sports, one with an effective transfer portal, clear eligibility standards, and protections and benefits for student athletes. While we appreciate the leadership of Senators Cruz and Cantwell in pursuit of these shared goals, we do not support the Protect College Sports Act as drafted. The bill leaves critical issues unresolved. It does not meaningfully preempt the patchwork of state laws or provide the protections needed to make and enforce consistent rules, both essential to long-term stability in college athletics. It also shifts ongoing rulemaking to Congress, limiting the ability to adapt quickly as the landscape evolves. Rather than reducing litigation, the bill likely expands it without offering clear alternatives for dispute resolution. Finally, the bill alters the House settlement revenue sharing framework in a way that may result in fewer student athletes receiving direct revenue share payments. We are committed to working with Senators Cruz and Cantwell and other members of Congress to improve this legislation so that it can provide lasting stability for college athletics. All that to say, the SEC and the Big Ten are not in support of what this bill states, are not in support of where this bill is heading. And I get it, right? I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're kind of the big two, not kind of, they are the big two in college sports right now, so their word means a lot. Whatever the Big Ten and the SEC say means a lot, and they kind of hold the most weight in the room here. However, Jackson, I think this bill, granted, I don't think this bill passes, but I think this one's probably got the best chance to pass, if that makes any sense here. This appears to be something that finally a lot of people are getting behind. Nick Saban's come out in opposition of some other bills, but Nick Saban was there in Congress today to testify in support of the Protect College Sports Act here. And we'll hear from a head coach or former Alabama head coach Nick Saban here momentarily on the other side of this break as we continue to talk about what he had to say there in Washington, D.C. You're listening and watching the Deep South College Football Show on Tide 100.9 at 1230 AM WTBC.
Bluetooth kits and so much more. If your golf cart needs repairs, the pros at Dixie Custom Carts can handle the job. Dixie Custom Carts, Greensboro Avenue in Tuscaloosa.
Coming up on The Game with Ryan Fowler.
Coming up on the Wednesday edition of The Game, we'll talk to Aaron Torres, Fox Sports national analyst. We'll talk about basketball. We'll talk some football with a national analyst. We'll talk to Coach Tony Franklin, who will break down an offensive line for us. What does it take to have a great offensive line? Tony Franklin will share some of those thoughts. We'll talk to Brooks Austin about the Elite 11 and more starting at 2 p.m. on The Game with Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9, 1230 WTBC, your home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
Longest-running sports talk show in Tuscaloosa. The Game with Ryan Fowler. Weekdays from 2 to
6829. That's 800-923-6829. What do you have to lose? Call 800-923-6829. Again, 800-923-6829.
Hey, y'all. This is Alabama offensive lineman William Sanders, and you're listening to Tide 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
Former Alabama head coach Nick Saban was in Washington, D.C. earlier this morning talking about the Protect College Sports Act. So let's hear what Coach Saban had to say. We got a couple of clips here from head coach Nick Saban. This first one here, he's talking about college sports under the current NIL system here. So here's what Nick Saban had to say, just a short little 12-second clip here.
It's become an arm race. Who spends the most has got the best chance to win. But I think it's a race to the bottom because if you don't spend to win, you lose your fan base and you don't have any revenue. It's become an arm race. Who spends the most has got the best chance to win. But I think it's a race to the bottom because if you don't spend to win, you lose your fan base and you don't have any revenue. So
I wanted to play that clip twice there just because it was so short, and so that way we could hear it again here from head coach Nick, or from former Alabama head coach Nick Saban here. Jackson, he's absolutely right. It's basically just like he said. It's become an arms race, right? You're hearing about all this money that all these teams are throwing around. Indiana's got a $40 million roster, allegedly. Texas has got a $40 million roster. LSU's roster this year is approaching $45 million here. And so really it's the schools with the most money. And at this point, you're trying to stop that, right? You don't want the rich to get richer. At least that's what it appears to be the case here with this proposed bill, with what Coach Saban is saying. You want to give other teams a chance at this point.
Right, and I think everybody thought this would allow for parity, but it's really just a conglomeration of the schools that have the biggest alumni base, that have the biggest billionaires in those school alumni bases. And so that's really what it is. Texas Tech, Oregon, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio State. Like, that's what it is. And you're going to continue to see those teams just continue to spend, just throw money at players just to get them on campus and on their roster. And, that may work. But, if you don't have the coaches also, it may not. We saw that with Texas last year. Not saying Sark is a bad coach, but, he's not.
They had some things to work on last year.
Right. And so I think, I don't know, it is exactly what Saban is saying, and the teams that don't have money to spend, they're going to get left behind, left in the dust, and then they have no revenue coming in, and then they're going to start cutting programs, and that's exactly what Saban's talking about right there. That's what Kirby Smart said at spring meetings last week, is that, if we don't stop all this spending, then these Olympic sports, these other non-revenue generating sports are going to get cut across the country.
And I'm glad you brought up what Kirby Smart said, because I put that in my article on Tide 109 here, talking about this bill from Nick Saban, or this bill from Congress here. This is what Kirby Smart had to say at SEC spring meetings. My biggest concern for our sport is we're going to ruin all other sports. And people say, well, that's just the way it is. I don't agree with that, because we fund Olympic sports with our program. We develop Olympians. We go to class with people that go throw a javelin. We go sit in class with an extra person that swims. Being with those people, but that's the assumption that we're talking about student athletes, which most of y'all would argue in this room that there is no student in the athlete. I still think the best thing for a young student is to go get a degree and train to be a professional while also training to be a professional athlete. Both of those. We're going to lose that if we keep spending, because not everybody can spend at the rate that we are currently spending here. He's absolutely right. Both these guys, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, as much as we want to pit the two against each other, because Saban, the master, Smart, the protege, Alabama, Georgia, the matchups that they've had the last couple of seasons, these two are in lockstep, it seems, when it comes to this stuff. And so you've got to protect those Olympic sports. And the way the money is currently being spent, right? And we'll play another Nick Saban quote here in just a second. But the way the money is currently being spent is unsustainable. Nick Saban, again, mentioned it here in another clip from his from the testimony that he gave to Congress.
Let me give you the history. My first year we had collective at Alabama, $2.7 million. Next year, $7 million. Next year, $10 million. I retired. Next year, $17 million. Next year, $24 million. Now you have schools that have close to $40 million rosters.
$40 million rosters. Jackson, in 2021, when NIL was legal and Alabama began their collective, they had $2.7 million. Just 2 years later, that had ballooned, and that had quintupled at that point to $10 million. Nick Saban retires, like he just said. Alabama increases that to $17 million. Last season, right, because now we're 2 seasons post Nick Saban's retirement, last season Alabama had $24 million. That's a lot of money that this collective is putting towards college sports. And Alabama is not a university that's got the money that a Texas or an Indiana or an Oregon or Texas Tech has got. Alabama doesn't have that money. They don't have the multi-billionaire alum, right? They don't have the Mark Cuban that Indiana does, or the Cody Campbell that Texas Tech does, or the Phil Knight that Oregon's got. Alabama doesn't have that. And so, and I'm using Alabama as the example because we cover Alabama and Nick Saban was the head coach at Alabama. So $24 million. if that's what Alabama was competing with last season, if Alabama had a $24 million roster last season, imagine what they could do with $40 million. Imagine what Alabama could be with $40 million, right? If Alabama was one of 5 teams to win a college football playoff game last season as a $24 million roster, imagine what they could do when that number's doubled, which is currently where we stand in college sports.
Right, but the other important thing is outside of those schools that you mentioned, like the Texas Tech, the Texas, Oregon, Indiana, the teams that have those billionaires to fund these programs, the teams that don't, that goes back on the everyday regular fan. They're raising ticket prices. They're asking you to pay $5 a month for their NIL collective.
Yeah.
And what is that going to do? That's just going to turn fans off, and you're not going to have that money rolling in because those fans are going to be like, well, shoot, my $5 isn't going to matter anyway because they're just going to outspend us no matter what. So why even give us the $5? So then you're just going to be back at sitting at where you are right now, and you're not going to have any room for improvement.
To use Alabama as the example again here, I mean, you're exactly right? You can go subscribe to Yay Alabama for $5. And I encourage you to go subscribe to Yay Alabama if you want to see the Crimson Tide have success. I do encourage that. But you're asking the everyday fan to pay $5. Jackson, gas prices are insane right now. They're coming down, but
gas, groceries, and then you're also, on top of that, you're asking them, now you're starting to tinker with the idea of, A-Day being, a $10 to $15 ticket just to get in.
Right.
When it's not even a spring game anymore. And then on top of that, ticket prices themselves for regular games are now double what they were 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, the bubble's got to burst, right? The bubble's got to burst at some point. And again, using Alabama as the example, 6 seasons ago, you were not asked to do what you were as an Alabama fan now. Now, in 2026, you're being asked to, hey, pay for Yay Alabama, right? Now you're getting exclusive content, but they're asking, hey, pay $5, $18 a month for Yay Alabama, all right? Oh, hey, now we're going to increase ticket prices. Hey, now we may charge you to come to some of these events that you originally were able to go to for free. If it's A-Day, if it's Fan Day in August, if it's, whatever, media events, right? They're asking you to pay for these things now. Hey, now we're going to increase ticket prices. Hey, by the way, your little Denny dog, that was $4 a year ago.
I was just going to bring that up.
Denny dogs are $12 now. You want a souvenir cup?
Right.
$18.
Not to mention they allowed, alcohol concessions to be sold in stadiums now to entice people to buy those tickets more. But, oh, wait, one beer, $20.
Dog, a friend of mine went to a game last year. A tall boy, now I'm not going to name the brand because, they don't sponsor us, but a tall boy, $24. He paid $24 for one drink. That's it. That's insane, man. I can go to Walmart, Piggly Wiggly, Target, whatever. I can go to a grocery store, pay $24, and I get a whole 12-pack, right? I mean, this is ridiculous. The bubble's got to burst at some point. And, oh, by the way, you're doing all this in a really poor, I'm not getting into politics, but in a really expensive economy right now.
Not to mention all these streaming platforms that these networks are pushing these games to be played on. You're going to have 6 different streaming platforms just to watch a game this weekend on this platform. Oh, next weekend it's going to be on a different platform. Yep. So you're going to spend $300 a month on a streaming platform just to watch your team.
If you are I'll take the Packers, for example, here, just because they are my team and I'm one of the poor suckers that got suckered into this. If you are a Green Bay Packer fan or an NFL fan, right, you've got to pay for cable. Even the cheaper option, YouTube TV, which I have right now, is $82 a month, right? Or $82.99, I think, because I just paused my subscription for the summer. So, all right, you're paying $82 a month for YouTube TV just to even be able to watch TV or watch a game. It may not even be your team because I'm in Alabama, so we don't really get Packers games on my TV very often.
And if you want the Sunday ticket package, that's what, an extra $150?
Yeah, Sunday tickets just ridiculous. I think they upped it. I think it's an extra $300 now for Sunday tickets. So, all right, I'm paying $390 essentially just to be able to watch my teams. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to buy Amazon Prime because you're going to play on a Thursday night and that game's on Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime's what, $10 a month? So now I'm paying $400. I'm paying $400.
Or the Peacock games on Monday night.
Monday Night Peacock games. Now I got to buy that subscription. Hey, my team, Green Bay, they're playing Wednesday night before Thanksgiving on Netflix. Now I got to buy a Netflix subscription. Suddenly I've got 3 streaming platforms and cable and regular television just to watch football.
And if you're
spending $400.
Now you got to watch them on Netflix. 6 games on Netflix Christmas.
I'm spending over $400 just to watch college football and the NFL at this point. It's unsustainable.
I do think they're under a lawsuit, the NFL now, about the conglomeration of streaming rights.
They are. They're currently kind of under a lawsuit for that stuff. But I mean, Jackson, at some point this bubble's got to burst. So I like the idea of a bill. I don't necessarily think getting Congress involved is the right idea, but it seems to be like this is where this is heading. So if we're going to get Congress involved, if we're going to get the government involved here, you've got to figure this out here at this point. We've got to find a way to figure this out. And if we're going to get Congress involved, then we need to do this the right way here. Jackson, I got to be out 155 if I combine here, I assume. We'll run for the next 3 minutes here, and then we'll kind of get out of here a little early and make way for Ryan Fowler, who's getting set up in the studio right there. You just saw him walk in here. But this is, if we're going to Congress for this, which appears to be the case, unfortunately, this bill, I think, has got the best chance to pass. Does it pass? Jackson, do you think this bill ends up passing? This doesn't fix everything. Got to figure out here. You can tell I'm passionate about this topic. There's still stuff you got to figure out. But this does a really much better job of getting things started to figure out than I think some of these other bills in the past have.
I think, whenever there's a good bill on the docket that the people want, there's a high likelihood that it doesn't get passed. But
Fair.
That being said, this does have the bipartisan support, so I do think that, the likelihood of it getting passed is a little higher. Because, all those graduates in Congress, they have a favorite team. Let's be real. Tommy Tuberville, he's an Auburn guy. He's been wanting this to get passed for a long time. So
Ted Cruz likes Texas, yeah.
Right. So Katie Britt, she's an Alabama fan, but
right.
So I do think from that standpoint, they would like to see the health of these sports continue to, get better, and I think this bill provides that opportunity. But as far as the SEC and the Big Ten coming out and saying, we don't like it, we want a Super League, that's essentially what that joint statement was saying. But
it really is. Like the SEC and the Big Ten, they're so far up their own rear end that I don't know that they can come out and objectively say, no, this is a good one. This is a good bill. We really like where this thing is heading here. So for the SEC and the Big Ten, kick rocks. I think this is the bill that's got the best chance to pass. I still don't think it does, but like Jackson said, you've got the bipartisan support of a Republican and a Democratic senators, bringing this to the table, and it's already being supported, co-endorsed by 2 other senators. One from Missouri, who I think he's also a Republican, and the guy from Delaware, who I think is also a Democrat. So clearly, you're starting to get some support on this. If it passes through the Senate. The congressional hearing was today. So if it passes through the Senate here in the next couple of days, it'll go to the House for a vote. If it passes through the House, then it lands on President Trump's desk at that point. But does this pass? I don't think it does. I think somebody's going to throw up
problems. Does it get through the House? That's the biggest question. Because if it does, Trump will sign it, no problem.
I think that's fair. If it gets through the Senate, I think if it gets through the Senate, which I think it does, it's got to get through the House. I don't think it gets through the House. But if it does, then we could be looking at this here. They've also got some stipulations in there. They've got the Lane Kiffin rule, or the commonly referred to as Lane Kiffin rule, that coaches are not allowed to leave during their season, right? They got to wait till their season's over, which most coaches do, but Lane Kiffin is Lane Kiffin. So that'll do it for us today here on the radio side of things. Coming up next, the game with Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
Now, this hour's West Alabama real-time news update from the Tuscaloosa Thread Newsroom.
Nick Saban went before Congress today to advocate for regulating college athlete pay, comparing the current NIL environment to a Ferrari racing toward the Grand Canyon. Northport officials are weighing a potential move for City Hall and want to hear from the public. Feedback can be submitted over the next 2 weeks. And the U.S. Supreme Court gave Alabama the green light to proceed with a congressional redistricting plan expected to flip a currently Democratic district to Republican control. For the details on these stories and more free coverage of local news, get connected at TuscaloosaThread.com.
Coming up on The Game with Ryan Fowler.
Coming up on the Wednesday edition of The Game, we'll talk to Aaron Torres, Fox Sports national analyst. We'll talk about basketball. We'll talk some football with a national analyst. We'll talk to Coach Tony Franklin, who will break down an offensive line for us. What does it take to have a great offensive line? Tony Franklin will share some of those thoughts. We'll talk to Brooks Austin about the Elite 11 and more starting at 2 p.m. on The Game with Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9, 1230 WTBC, your home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
Longest running sports talk show in Tuscaloosa. The Game with Ryan Fowler. Weekdays from